God of love and light, oil the hinges of our heart's doors, that they may swing easily open to welcome you. Amen. So what's the point? What is the point? Here we have Jesus, that radical, healing, preaching, life-disrupting, life-transforming rabbi suddenly giving advice about social etiquette, like some first-century Martha Stewart. It's a bit out of character, don't you think? So what's Jesus up to? Well, as I so often do when I find myself in a muddle, I consulted my kids. There's a TV show on the Disney Channel called The Ant Farm. Anybody ever seen The Ant Farm? Children in our midst? They're all over there. Hey, kids under the tables, anybody seen The Ant Farm? Yes. Excellent. I haven't. But Ian has. And last week he told me about a certain episode. It goes like this. So the show is set in high school. And one of the characters, Fletcher, decides he wants to sit at the pool table at lunch with all the other cool kids. He marches over to the table to ask them. And the guy at the head of the table, who is probably the most cool kid, he says, "Sure, let me show you around." You seen this episode? All right. So the two of them start walking past the table. And the cool kid, he says, "This is Abby, and this is her seat. And this is Spencer, and this is his seat. And this is Natalie, and this is her seat." And on they go until they come to an empty seat. And the cool kid says to Fletcher, "And this is your seat." When Fletcher looks around, he realizes that the cool kid has walked him all the way back to the other side of the lunchroom, far away from the pool table. Yeah. We've all bumped into that, right? Those rules, spoken or unspoken, that dictate where we belong, on one side of the lunchroom or the other, with the jocks or in the theater crowd, at the red table or the green, in the front of the bus or at the back, in the boardroom or the front office, in this neighborhood or not. Whether we belong and with whom, it is, maybe always has been, one of our most urgent, most tender questions. Whether we belong. It's a question, friends, that erupted into tragedy the night that George Zimmerman encountered Trayvon Martin walking through the neighborhood. Whether Trayvon belonged there. As it turned out, Trayvon did. He was visiting his father, but George was convinced that the boy in the hoodie was up to no good, had no reason to be in that neighborhood. He just looked out of place. So George went after him, and they got in a fight. And George Zimmerman shot and killed Trayvon Martin. What did George Zimmerman see, I wonder? What does any of us see that leads us to draw those lines in our neighborhoods and in our lives? On what basis does anyone sort the deck and place the cards around the table? We do it, consciously or unconsciously, every day. Draw boundaries based on what a person is wearing, how tall or how short she is, what he talks like, We do it, draw conclusions, often without realizing it, about who belongs at the head of the table and who at the foot, and where in between exactly we fit, where we belong. Or we suffer the decisions made by someone else, as in, you go to the back of the bus. Enter Jesus, who is all about tearing down those boundaries, shuffling the name tags and rewriting the seating charts. When you think about it, it's surprising that he got any dinner invitations at all. There they were, just sitting down to a formal meal at the Sabbath. Everything had been carefully planned, including the seating, with the cool kids, the politically and religiously well-positioned, wealthy guests seated near the host, and the others, the least important guests, the one who wore last year's fashions, laughed too loud and told off-color jokes, seated at the far end. And as they lounged on cushions, a lot like our kids are lounging on cushions right now because they didn't have chairs, they all sat on pillows on the floor. And they passed the wine and they ate chunks of fresh baked challah bread. Jesus called them out, as he so often did, and turned their self-satisfied soiree into a lesson in kingdom etiquette. Hold up, he said. Don't be so eager to sit at the top. You should try a different seat, maybe one further down. What? You think those folks look shifty? Well, sit there anyway. You may be surprised by what you find, because the thing is, we miss stuff when we stick to the seating chart, when we only hang out with those we already know and trust and admire. Sometimes what we miss can lead to tragedy and heartbreak, like mistaking a teenage boy on his way home for a hoodlum looking for trouble. But sometimes what we miss is a chance to experience something heart-healing, like joy, or friendship, laughter, or beauty. Have you ever seen Susan Boyle's audition on the TV show Britain's Got Talent? Anybody here seen? It was back in 2009 that Susan Boyle marched onto that stage, one hand clutching a mic, the other one on her hip. 47 and never been kissed, she said. Socially a bit awkward. A country bumpkin from a tiny village somewhere in England. She told the judges that she wanted to be a famous singer, and they all but rolled their eyes. The audience, thousands of onlookers in that massive space, they all tittered. And then the music began. Susan raised her microphone and took a breath. I dreamed a dream in time gone by, when hope was high and life worth living. From Les Miserables. And the crowd, if you've seen it, can you picture it? The crowd erupted into applause because her voice, her stunning, perfect voice, it filled the hall. They'd all been certain she didn't belong on the stage, that stage, or any stage. She just looked out of place. And then she sang. And you know what? That scene has been replayed on YouTube 130 million times. since her live performance. I think at least 100 of those were mine. Which just goes to show how little we can know, really, about our prospective dinner companions until we sit down with them and listen. And how deeply we may be moved once we do. This is the truth of it, I think. The point Jesus was trying to convey, not just that we should be humble, but that we should be open. Open to the gifts, the beauty, the blessings that await us at the other end of the table. Now we know something about blessing at Saugatuck Congregational Church. Can I get an amen?
Amen.
We know what it's like to change seats, to rearrange the table, sometimes by choice and sometimes because circumstances beyond our control. I call them holy intrusions. And so we worship at the Temple Israel, hosted by our Jewish sisters and brothers, or at the beach, where we break bread with partner churches from all around the area and all get sand between our toes. We serve meals downtown at the Gillespie Center and throw a Thanksgiving feast. We welcome new folks to Saugatuck Church, move over to make room in the pew. And each time the chairs are shuffled, every time the table is rearranged, we make new friends, encounter new gifts, find ourselves blessed. So you remember that episode from the ant farm that I mentioned? Here's how it ended. Fletcher's very creative friend, feeling sympathy for Fletcher, he goes out and he creates his own cool table. He covers the light fixtures with gels, so there are all different color lights, and he brings in a live band. People flock to the table until everyone in the dining hall is crammed around that one table. Everyone except that most cool kid. Then somebody looks up and sees him standing over there and says to him, "You want to join us? 'Cause there's always room for more." There's always room for more. Who knew that Disney could get it so right? That, friends, is kingdom etiquette. And it's what God calls us all to do, to rewrite the rules, to throw our own banquet and spread the news. Everyone has a place at this table. Long-time members or first-time guests, welcome. PhD in biblical literature or not sure you've ever actually opened that book, welcome. Call yourself congregational or spiritual but not religious, seeking or skeptical, welcome. Gay, straight, brown, black, white, lover of Celtic ballads, soaring organ, Van Halen or Snow Patrol, come on in. This is your seat, and this is your seat, and this is your seat, and that is your seat. Yours, and yours, and yours. Here we all belong, not because of what we can do or what we wear or who we know, but because God, whose love encircles us all, has invited us all to come. This church that we are, that church that we're building, aspires to be a community of Christ welcoming all people. That's what our vision statement says. And it's a powerful claim. One that calls us all to important, faithful work. To set more places. To pull up even more chairs. Not because God will reward us for our good deeds, but because when we hang out together, rub elbows, all of us from all our different places, we encounter wonder and joy, laughter and beauty, hope and healing, and right here, the very face of Christ. That's what I think Jesus meant when he said, "You will be repaid." That, my friends, is the point. Christ is in our midst, within us, between us, hosting, healing, making us whole. Thanks be to God. Amen.
Amen.